Okay, so welcome to this month's MBCEA Presents. It is BIM 101 and it is a panel and it is going to be pretty informal. We welcome questions. We have a few different people that are subject matter experts that are going to be speaking to you. If you have any questions along the way and you want to put it in chat, that is great. I will be moderating and sharing those questions. Also, at the end of each of the presenters' portion, we will open up the floor for questions as well. So we ask that you please stay muted during the presentation unless you do have a question. It's just so that we don't have any background noise. So I am going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to introduce you to our first presenter, who is Jake Ball. He's with BlueScope and the chair of the MBMA BIM task group. He will share his screen and start us off with BIM 101.
Thanks, Sasha. So we'll just walk through a couple of things here on my screen real quick regarding metal building BIM use, kind of an introduction to BIM, and some of the things that the Metal Building Manufacturers Association has been doing to kind of provide some more resources to our customer base on this topic. So, I'll start off and introduce myself. So, who am I? My name is Jake. I want to make clear here that this is me right here. This is not Jake in the bottom right. That's Omar. I was trying to get him to pose for that picture. So I work for BlueScope Buildings, graduated from University of Missouri in 2005, had 15 plus years of experience in the metal building industry, creeping up on 20 here. And I'm a licensed professional engineer in Missouri, Kansas, and Florida. So I want to talk a little bit kind of just what is BIM. So generally speaking, BIM stands for Building Information Modeling. I would say some people have even thrown out that maybe modeling should be replaced with management because we talk a lot about BIM around the 3D model with the building, but really, BIM is a process we follow, and it's a process that utilizes this 3D data and collects all your project data in one place, so everybody involved in a project can access that data, and also gives you a good way to kind of pull that data down and analyze it. So we talk a lot about the 3D model, but I do want to make sure kind of there are more things that BIM can be used for. It's a big word, it can mean a lot of things. And one of those things is around data management. But, primarily for our business, we look at the 3D model as a big part of it. So wanted to talk a little bit about a survey that we did with the MBCEA base. So MBMA submitted a survey to the February 2024 MBCEA newsletter. It was open to all MBCA members. We got about 12 questions on that survey, got 34 responses. Also issued the survey in 2021 and received 45 responses. So what was in the survey? So we had some questions in there just over demographics, like where's your business at? How do you use BIM? Had some questions going over what kind of requirements you're seeing, if they're contracted for, how are you using it? And then 11 and 12 were in what kind of resources are the MBCEA base looking for from MBMA to support this? And our goal is to do this survey every 2 to 3 years. So probably next year sometime we'll be sending it out again. So if this is something that you or your business are really interested in, please be looking for that survey and fill it out because it really helps us decide what our direction is going to be. So just kind of real quick, go through some of the results. I'm going to kind of focus on those like last few questions that were kind of on what the things people are looking for. So a lot of people very interested in education or resources on this topic. And then, people asking we're asking what's the greatest value of BIM for your business. This was a new one on the survey this year, but most people are using this for running clash detection or marketing. So one of those two things, and those are kind of, obviously very different scopes of work. Marketing would be a less accurate model. It's just for visualization, where clash detection obviously needs to be very, very accurate. So, then we also kind of asked what are some training targets. So, if you're interested in 3D modeling, what of these things would be helpful? So available applications, programs, we think it's very high value, high difficulty. There's a lot out there. BIM 101, which we're kind of going through here, medium value, low difficulty, and other projects would be medium to low value or low difficulty. So again, I want to talk about some of the resources that you have available, some of which we've produced in MBMA, some of which we contribute to. So I want to talk about level of development and the BIM Form Global Level of Development Specification. So BIM Forum Global is a spec that MBMA contributes to. So we contribute to this specification on what we refer to as level of development for BIM use. So I need to point out that there is a bimforum.com, which is a separate, it's kind of confusing, is a separate entity. And that specification is not contributed to by MBMA. So kind of just a summary of level of development goes from 100 to 400. And it's kind of representative element maturity for a project. So if you say level 100, very early phases of project, element is not very accurate. Level 400 would be very accurate, basically ready for fab. So like I said, LOD is defined at a component level, not a project level. And this specification provides definitions for each component with graphic representations of what those level developments mean. These are very useful in setting scope and communicating with partners, and it creates a common language that we can all speak to. So, if you are interested in learning more about BIM, getting familiar with this and using it as a way to scope your projects is useful. This is kind of just a quick image of what one of the level of development components looks like. So this is metal building primary framing systems, and you can kind of see it level 100, it's sort of like site planning. 200 is marketing visualization. 300 is designed. So that includes design parts. You can run some coordination on it. 350 includes all design parts, connections, miscellaneous steel, good for clash detection. And then 400 includes fabrication data. We've also produced a frequently asked questions document. So this was actually made by MBMA BIM Task Group, which I'm the chair of, and Jeff is also a member of. So this is made up of MBMA member companies. We do have one representative that I want to kind of give a shout out to and thank from MBCA, and that is Seth Collins from Dunn Building Company. So Seth has been helping us out with that too, and he's contributed to that some. You can find this at mbma.com. Go to the MBMA website, the upper right-hand corner. There's a drop down that says technical. Go to design resources, and you can find this. And this is a nice quick reference for you on frequently asked questions regarding BIM. So, and we actually developed this based on feedback we got from that BIM use survey. So again, if there's something you're interested in, please take the time to fill out that survey. It helps us a lot. Just what I want to go through real quick, high level, quick tips on things you can do getting into BIM. So like I said, become really familiar with those LOD definitions. Those are really helpful, like I said, in kind of qualifying scope, defining what you're looking for, what you need. Avoid over specifying models, so if you just need some coordination, you don't need to run full clash detection. You don't need to ask for an LOD 400 model. You're kind of overpaying for something you don't need. Know what LODs can be used for which functions. Like I said, that's kind of a critical thing. If you're contracting a job where BIM work is included in the scope of work, please make sure you know what is in that contract. And if you were really interested in it, the Association of General Contractors does have a certificate of management course on BIM. So that might be a good way to learn more about it. And if you were really, really interested in, you really want to jump into it, just dive in. If you're really interested in adding BIM workflows to your business, build a business plan and scale to your business and start small, and just get into it. So just real quick, one last thing here, just some resources, what can help. Like I said, that bimforum.global spec is a great resource to start with. And we are actually currently working on something in the MBMA BIM task group to kind of provide some additional guidance to that. You can always contact MBMA through mbma.com. I can't speak for everybody else, but I'm going to speak for everybody else a little bit here. I think probably anybody on this panel would be really happy to talk to you about this topic. We're all passionate about it. And we've got this frequently asked questions document I talked about. And like I said earlier, we do have more to come. We're regularly meeting every month or two, working on additional training, support documentation, stuff like that. Like I mentioned earlier, that Association of General Contractors CM BIM course. And there's an AIA BIM guide, which goes through some definitions, things like that. So, that's the American Institute of Architects. And AISC also has a BIM and VDC. So if you're not familiar with the term VDC, it's a virtual design and construction. And I've kind of referred to that as like a field application of BIM work. So it's kind of how you take the actual 3D modeling office work you do and apply it in the field. So AISC has some good resources on that. So those are some good resources for you. And, those were all the topics that I kind of wanted to get through. And I wanted to give time for everybody else. So Thank you, everybody, and we'll have some time for questions at the end. And I will hand it back to Sasha. Thanks, Sasha.
Great, absolutely. If anyone does have a question specific to anything that Jake just went over now, we are happy to entertain it throughout as well. There will also be a time period at the end. That was a lot of information. So as you're taking that all in and listening to the rest of the presenters, if you do think of something, feel free to put it in the chat. And hopefully by the end, we'll cover some of your questions and or you might have more. So anything before I introduce Marco? All right, so we're going to hear now from Marco Francisco with all weather insulated panels.
Awesome. Thank you, Sasha. Jake covered a ton of stuff, which is great as far as getting something handed off to me. So on my end, I'm covering, they asked me to talk about, hey, what was the journey for all weather insulated panels adopting BIM? Why as a panel manufacturer did you adopt this process? And I'll take you through that very high level. But to give a little bit of background on myself, Marco Francisco, I'm the director of digital construction at All Weather. That includes everything digital, drafting services, estimating services, and some of the technical services as well. I'm 15 years in metal buildings, 20 years in construction. I'm a licensed civil engineer in California, Texas, and Pennsylvania. As far as adoption from a panel manufacturing perspective, it was over 10 years ago, and started with, we wanted product visibility, right? So the first step for us was to have BIM objects available for architects, engineers, whomever to download so that they know what our products were. They could integrate them into our model, get a good understanding of what we offer, how our products perform. And then Jake touched on it a little bit as well. We focused on LOD 200 and 300 to kind of cover a lot of the scope. A lot of the architects' early phase stuff, they wanted just 200, just a general visualization. Here it is, simple, light models. And then further downstream, we're talking to some of the engineers, they wanted LOD 300, something that could get them to 350 ready. So a component that could get them to 350 ready so they can run things like clash detection. Clash detection is the biggest thing that our clients asked for that. So we wanted to make sure we had something available for that as well. And then from there, Jake had mentioned it, BIM isn't a product, it's a process, right? So we used it to improve our internal processes, make things more efficient. The way we're set up now, we can take a BIM model or the start of a BIM model anywhere from like pre-bid phase, if the architect or our client has a model, we can take it, we can render over top of it, we can put our products in there, run estimates off of it. Everything goes well, we win the project, we'll do our shop drawing modeling off of that, take that all the way to our bill of materials. There's a lot of benefits using, say, a Revit or a Tekla platform. You get a lot of automation on your bill of materials that way. So again, just streamlining, making everything more efficient. And then where things really picked up was, okay, we made these decisions. We put it out there for our clients. We adopted a lot of the things internally, made our processes more efficient. But when the clients started asking for it, and there was a chance of getting potentially locked out of bidding projects because BIM was in the specification or there was a BIM execution plan in place, we decided as a company, we have to make sure we cater to the needs of our clients. So we offer up everything from self-serve, like I talked about with the BIM objects, all the way to fully guided modeled experience. We'll put the model together for you, or if the demand, and this is kind of the more common thing, is the demand is the client wants to own the central model and each trade needs to be able to work in there and drop in their BIM objects. Everything is collaborative. We can do that as well. So that's kind of a high level walkthrough of how and why All Weather adopted the BIM process overall.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. Anyone have any questions for what Marco just shared? All right, we will move on to Jeff Clark with BIM Built Innovations.
Okay, can you hear me? We're good? All right. I am Jeff Clark with BIM Built Innovations. I've been in metal buildings and prefab construction for 17 years, going on 18. I started my business 2 years ago, basically to help the MBMA members, metal building manufacturers, get in and transition into BIM with Tekla structures, primarily in their drafting departments and engineering departments. And what I'm going to talk about is basically just why you should use BIM with your business. So I'll share my screen here. Okay, so why you should use BIM within your business. As others have mentioned, avoid missing out on projects. So there are certain government projects that you will miss out on if you are not BIM compliant. A lot of those through the GSA, I think it's the Government Services Association, they require BIM on all of their larger projects. Certain states have adopted BIM requirements for their major projects, such as like Wisconsin. They're one of the big players using BIM up there. Next here, large architects and firms. So primarily, I would say most, if not all, large firms have transitioned to BIM and require their partners or to work within BIM as well. So if you may work with try to get a job and you're going to be outbid, or you're not even going to get an offer to bid because you don't use BIM. And then lastly, private sector clients, same kind of deal there. They have for marketing and things of that nature, they just seem to like using BIM, so we're transitioning through that. And then another one would be to gain a competitive edge. So BIM enables you at an early stage to showcase your possibilities through your projects. So you're seeing, we mentioned earlier with an uptick in marketing. This is one of those items. Having a BIM model to sell and marketing is a very forward-looking idea. And then again, in a crowded market, BIM offers those opportunities, showing that you're a tech-forward partner, attracting repeat business from forward-thinking clients. And then lastly, improving efficiency through efficiency and cost. So a big one for contractors is reducing clashes and errors, as well as enhanced collaboration. And I'm going to show a quick demo. It's a very simple demo. And then lastly, it's reducing project timelines. We're seeing up to 20% on some projects. That's a great savings there. So that's it for that one. And then I'm going to go into Tekla. So this is just a large building. Note that this came from MBS design software. So they released in 2020. We now have the option. If your supplier uses MBS design, they have the option to provide BIM if they're willing to pay for it. So if you need BIM and you have a preferred partner, I urge you to get those folks into BIM. So this project here, say we go through, we detail everything, we send it to the shop, it goes out into the field. We can do some clash detection, but with MBS, the design software itself, as you all probably know, it's rather old. So it basically details as if it were a 2D process. You still have all the model objects, but you can run into clashes. So your typical clash detection in 3D environments doesn't necessarily work as well as we want, because we have typically like our flanges are lapping on top of our purlins and things of that nature. But you still can go in there and look around and see things. So we've got this model, it's great, and we send it over to our client. So the erecting team, whoever, they get this model. You don't have to pay for Trimble Connect. I think you may want to sign in. It's a free account if your vendor has Trimble Tekla. So you can sign in and you can do whatever you want to do here. But an example that I want to show is just a flange brace fouling with a portal frame. So we can zoom into this column here. and we can rotate around there. And I would hope the detailer finds us out in the detailing stage, but if they don't, you're out here in the field and you say, "Hey man, I've got this thing fouling my rod bracing as well as my portal frame." That's great. Well, not great, but what are we going to do to go about fixing this? As a contractor, you can go in here and type in something that we have an error, flange brace, fouling, bracing. And we can set this as a critical priority and set a date that I need this thing, I need to answer this right now. I would probably prefer to just swing this flange brace over and bolt it in there. And you can assign who you want to talk to. So maybe you're going to send that to the salesman or the customer service representative over there. I'm just going to send it to myself. And then we can say what kind of error that is. So it's a clash and I need an answer on this right away. So I can save this. And now as soon as I hit save, this is sending an email back to that person that I set this that I assigned it to. And that person's going to get an email in about 30 seconds saying that, "Hey, I've got this problem." And he can go see that error. All right, so I'm kind of just going to wait around and I'll show you the email here shortly. But inside of my Tekla model, as a drafter or customer service rep, whatever, I'm in Tekla and I can go to my to-dos. And as soon as I log the to-do, the builder logs that to-do in Trimble Connect in his software, I will get a to-do populated in my software. So I can click this inside of Tekla and it says, "Hey, I've got this error." I can click this little image here and it'll zoom directly to the error and I can see that it's there. So rather than us circling up a 2D drawing and emailing a picture of that drawing over to a customer service rep, you see that, "Hey, this thing's there. Go check your to-dos, pop it up," and then over a phone call really quick, you say, "Yeah, that's an error. Go ahead and fix it and we'll sort the money out later on," right? So we have that, and then we've also note here that I've got an email saying that I have a to-do. So this is all happening instantaneously as you find issues out in the field. That collaboration value goes up, just insurmountable versus, I would say, the old way or other ways of having to do a phone call or an email or things of that nature. So we just get that information a lot more quickly. You could do the same thing with maybe you're missing a portal frame out in the field. You could say, "Hey, I'm missing this." The guys out in your manufacturer says, "Yeah, we didn't ship it," or, "Well, it must have got lost." We can ship it right away. So we already have all that data. We have the fab drawings and it's linked, and we can handle all that stuff. So that's really all I have to show. It's pretty quick and pretty basic. Hope we're not having a ton of these type of errors out in the field, but if you do, it's rather simple to communicate back and forth. So,
Thank you, Jeff. Do we have any questions specific to what Jeff just presented to us? When I open the chat, I will let any of you or all of you, because you might have different answers, answer this question that was presented. What do you see as the largest roadblock for manufacturers adopting BIM?
I can take that one initially here. So Jeff showed the tremendous potential for like collaboration and cost and time savings. I know that's huge for everybody here, but I think even that shows. I'd say the biggest hurdle potentially is being scared off by something like that. How do we go from our traditional processes all the way to what Jeff is doing? So Jake, I think one of the key bullets there that shouldn't be overlooked is he put start small. And so for us as a manufacturer, the first thing we did was here, let's create LOD 200 and 300 and put it out to our clients, the ones that already use BIM. Let's give them these objects so that they can integrate it into the models and do, with it what they can. And then while we had that going, we decided, okay, we'll talk to our peers. What kind of trainings can we get? Maybe talk to consultants on. I, as a manufacturer, as a company, want to get from here to here. and then have a training plan and understand that it's going to take time to get to where Jeff is. So we had some lucky hires targeting folks that had Revit experience coming out of college. But as far as Tekla goes, it's one of those things where we paired with another company to get us trained up on it, to get us to where we want it to be. So I'd say the biggest roadblock I would say is almost self-imposed, of like, being afraid to go from your traditional processes to these more modern, super efficient processes. But like Jake said, just start small, get your feet wet with BIM objects, train your folks up, and then you'll get there.
Yeah. And that, just to kind of add on, I think one of the things to add on to what Marco, I think part of it is it's new, right? So we're all maybe a little scared and a little slow to adopt new things sometimes. And when we do adopt new things, there will be some bleed. It's just natural. And we all work in the construction business, right? And like, who has had more than one problem to deal with today? uh, you know, project delays, field error, whatever, So that's a little bit of a hurdle sometimes to adopting new things. We're all trying to deal with the problem of the day, so that can always be a hurdle. And then on the manufacturer side, this is a new thing. It isn't necessarily driven towards just pushing steel through your plant. There's a little bit of an extra upfront thing going on there, so there is some extra cost that gets incurred there. And that can scare people away too, because you're hearing, well, what, I need BIM, but my building's going to be more expensive. And I don't have any data to back this up, so I'm cautious to say it, but I'm confident in saying that if you can adopt BIM workflows and make them successful, you may be paying a little bit more up front, but you're going to save on the back end. So you're taking some of that money from the back end of the project and putting it on the front end of the project, which I think is also maybe a little bit of a scary enough to scare some people away from adopting it. But
Jake, I'm happy you brought that up. Actually, it rang something in my head here too. For us internally, we had our processes great. We had, everything was built towards lead times for customers. There was the thought, I think misconception, that, hey, it's going to take longer to model something than to draw something. Initially, it's true, but eventually you cross the bridge where like your modeling is just as fast as your drawing process for your shops. The other half of what my drafters do is the bill of materials. Jeff kind of touched on it, and I talked about earlier too. The Revit and Tekla have a lot of stuff that's out of the box, where you're going to get at least part of your bill of materials. For us, it's panels. It's modeled in there. It'll do it automatically. So a lot of the stuff where, you make the case that maybe it is a slower process initially, I would counter with like, look, once you have your template in place and your folks are trained, it's actually a much faster process downstream.
Yeah. I would, I guess, thirdly add the reason that I've seen people stray away from getting into Tekla in the metal building industry, manufacturers specifically, is just really, it's two things. One, it's cost, and two, MBS is so good in the 2D environment on simple projects that you just can't compete with a BIM model. Just be completely honest with you, low complexity projects, Tekla is not going to be faster than that 2D process, just because we can we can engineer, draft, and release it to the shop in like 4 or 5 hours on somebody's garage, right? You're not going to do that in a Tekla model. And with that, Tekla's great, but it does require a lot of setup for pre-engineered metal buildings. 3-plate, Tekla was not designed to handle that. We do have the tools from MBS, the MBS slide rule import, but even once you have that in there, you're still there's a bunch of holes everywhere, and it's a little cumbersome to get into. And you typically have to hire somebody to help you set those things up. Or you have to take somebody in-house, and you take somebody out of your production schedule. And when you take somebody out of your production schedule, that's just a really tough pill to swallow for most manufacturers. That's what I'm seeing.
Yeah. That's a good point too. I just add to what Jeff said. A lot of this BIM software does not come with metal building stuff out of the box.
Right.
we don't have standard shapes like AISC standard shapes. So
Well, hey, Sasha, can you hear me? Everyone hear
Yep,
me?
you're good.
Yep.
So let me, as you can see, I'm kind of out in the field today. So let me kind of give you a little bit of from a contractor's perspective on BIM, and kind of the different levels of as we see it. Yes, it is a little bit nerve-wracking at first, but what I recommend, what we've done to begin with, is first of all, you don't have to have BIM or Tekla in your office. Okay, a lot of the manufacturers can give you a BIM version, a 3D model of the building in PDF, and which is anybody can open it, and everybody can convert from Tekla Revit to PDF. Everybody can get that. Most brands will give that to you, and you can use that as a sales tool. Okay, it takes nothing special to it. You can submit it in with your presentation to the end customer and the end owner, or you can also walk them around on a simple PDF model. So if you have nobody really in your office to run it, you want to start at a very low level, I would recommend requesting the PDF model of it. Everybody can use it. Its owners love it. They can't touch it. They can't modify it, but they can play with it and spin it around on their own leisure. Then if you want to go ahead and graduate beyond that, we recommend getting a drafter on board, or at least part-time drafter, or somebody to start playing with BIM or Tekla models from the manufacturers. And once you start stepping into that world, you almost feel blind if you don't have it, okay? Because we go from being able to check anchor bolts on foundations to make sure they sit inside the wraps of the piers, to having field condition issues. The biggest problem is when you have a field issue, it's typically a fabrication. With everyone using a lot of 3D modeling now, it's not as much class detection as it used to be. It's that they welded a plate wrong upside down on a rafter, or they got a stiffener weld on the wrong side, or whatever that is. So we have our field, they'll send us an issue or a picture or a problem, they'll call us, we'll go into our drafting department, pull up the 3D model, pull the dimension from the top of the rafter, the first set of bolts. They'll go in the field, pull the rafter, the first set of bolts, and says, yep, the plate's flipped upside down. We'll send both that to the manufacturer, the picture of the BIM model, the picture of what's in the field, show them the problem, and we get the more information you can give them and more documentation, the faster turnaround time you can get, because they understand the problem now too. So as far as BIM helpfulness in construction, our biggest advantage is being able to resolve field issues, field conflicts, other structural connections to buildings, crane clearances, you name it. You basically have a 3D model that you're able to snap dimensions on to see if it matches what you're dealing with in the field. So yeah, it's coming. It's a little bit scary, but the younger kids do that. The younger kids love drafting. They love the computer games, and it actually helps bring the younger crowd into your companies because they like the tool that you're promoting. And you don't have to know a lot about it. You can do a little bit of research. I don't run BIM. I'm a big advocate of it. I don't have it on my computer. I don't run it, but I have people that around me that help us get through it and open it up a new world of what we're able to deal with architects, engineers, and field conditions with.
Excellent. Thank you. And I'm glad you were able to join us from the job site. And then your tech worked. Yay.
Yeah. Well, I think what Tucker said there is a good example of what I was saying, of sometimes maybe that fear of paying for it from your manufacturer up front winds up paying off on the back end, because that lost time in the field is a big cost drain. So anytime you can cut that shorter, I think you're probably gaining something from that.
We have another question in the chat, but if anyone has any questions for Tucker, especially as our contractor representative on the panel, please feel free to ask. But we got a question from a manufacturing standpoint. Are you seeing an uptick of requests for BIM services, and are you staffing to take care of the increased need?
Yeah, so Jeff noted that on there that you run the risk of getting locked out of projects if you don't have BIM. For us at All Weather, yes. Short answer is yes. It's making its way into the specs. We're getting BEPs in place of specs sometimes. So BIM is required to even bid on specific projects. We made the business decision to convert our team, our existing 2D team, to kind of fortify the 3D team and have them learn it as well. So yeah.
Yeah, and to answer that on our side, the answer to both those questions is yes. And I think that even want to point out something with the wording there. So like I said, we talk a lot about BIM models, and a lot of times we're focused on what we can provide as a product in terms of the model, kind of like as a on the back end of the project. But there is an opportunity here, I think, to think of BIM as a service also, which is more of something that would kind of follow along, and that's what that LOD progression is very good at showing, is showing the evolution and development of a project. And as kind of like Jeff said earlier too, I think was a really good point. Not every project is going to benefit from a BIM workflow. The more architectural stuff like that, things you've got going on, the more it's going to benefit. But your little simple sheds probably aren't going to necessarily get tons of benefit from a BIM workflow. So that, is just something, again, from a business perspective, you've got to think about when trying to adopt those sorts of workflows. And I do want to at least take an opportunity to thank Seth. I see he's been posting some links in the chat. So thank you, Seth.
Yeah, so if you don't have your chat open, you should open it. You just click on chat in the black bar, and you can get those links that Seth has been sharing that Jake had referred to. The next question that came in was, are you seeing more enhanced drawings with manufacturers utilizing BIM for smart construction drawings in the field, looking at your iPad versus paper plans?
Our end, well, we're a mixed bag. Depends on the age of the guy in the field. The older guys like the blueprints. The younger guys like the iPads. At least in our perspective of things. So yes, some manufacturers are pushing it a lot more than others.
We've done some stuff where we've integrated, I guess it'd be like BIM adjacent, like 3D models and install it. We've integrated that into our shop drawings, and the shop drawings are PDF. You can print them out if you want to take them up there. We have QR codes to take you to some tools, or if it's just, you're looking at it from a computer or an iPad, you can click through and access those same details. So I think there's a happy medium you can do there too.
Yeah, and I think that too, the smart drawings are a good example of a BIM application that might not be directly tied to your 3D model too. So yeah, I think that probably depends on manufacturer as to whether or not they provide enhanced drawings.
We have a comment in the chat, not necessarily a question, but for anybody who's not following along, I will read it. From a manufacturing standpoint, we actually now require certain file types that can only be created by a BIM modeling software for our automated equipment. Even the projects that may not need to run in Tekla, we still need to generate the NC1 files for the equipment to read.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And you get that out of MBS, you get a lot of those files, but just keep in mind that anytime you're in MBS and it requires a change, so the engineer, maybe they moved or they added a thickness. So they bumped the thickness of a flange by 3/8 of an inch. That flange, unless it runs back through MBS, does not now the NC file that comes out of MBS or the DXF file, etc., that has the wrong data on it versus before. So making that change in Tekla is a lot simpler than making that change in a 2D world, though it may sound kind of counterintuitive. You either have to go back into MBS and make the changes and then output it back to the drafter, or the drafter has to go through all these different files in 2D and update those thicknesses. And it's oftentimes it's like 3 or 4 different files they have to go edit, and you have 3 or 4 different opportunities to make a mistake. Whereas if we go into Tekla, we make that mistake potentially one time, and that data then flows downstream from there. And that's really important about those NC1 files. Another thing for you manufacturers is, as most of you probably already know, the average age of welders is like 45 to 55, somewhere around there. And we are seeing a transition in the industry to automated welders to kind of help with that. As you know, it's an unfortunate reality that we don't have as many people going into the trades, and we still have to build things. So how are we going to get that to happen? You're going to use automated welding machines, and that data comes out of Tekla. It does not come out of MBS without somebody writing a tool for you to get that information.
Next question is, in what stage of the project should you implement the BIM process?
I think this is a good question for Tucker.
Well, okay. So let's talk about what we are. We are a design build construction company with also an engineering group on it. So we're a little bit of an unusual one, but we start with BIM from the very beginning. So we actually lay the project out in Revit, which is based. Revit and Tech are kind of the same thing. For the layman's, they're both 3D modeling programs. So we lay out the building in Revit. We do our foundations in Revit. We draw our rebar in Revit. We lay the whole structure out in Revit. And then we order the building based off the parameters we developed from our basic model with the customer. And we put a dummy building in there until the manufacturer provides us the BIM model. We take the dummy building out as a placeholder and throw our actual BIM model of the building in. So really, you can start as soon as the site work is done. There's other site work programs that can actually do the whole site work in a 3D model too. We haven't quite got into that, but we start using 3D modeling, BIM, Revit, Tekla, basically from day one from layout.
Yeah, and for us as manufacturers, the ideal situation for us is, a Tucker, like they have a model, they give that to us kind of pre-bid. We put our stuff on there. We'll do the renders, make it aesthetically correct, figure out the costing, the estimating from there, hand it back to them, and then it just makes the process that much. So yeah, for us, the earlier the better.
Great. Next question. I'm sorry, did I interrupt someone?
No, I was just agreeing.
Okay. If you have taper column and customer requested to recess the column by 1 foot, would it be easier to fix in BIM, Tekla, without rerunning MBS, Tekla?
If you're using slide rule, then yes, it would be faster to make that change without going. Well, you have to go back to the engineer, right, to make sure it's okay. But it would be faster, most likely, to make the change if you've already finalized a model or you're close to finalizing it. It's definitely faster just to make the change. There's not a tool like basically the data flow from slide rule or MBS to Tekla is one way, so we can't pass it back uphill. So it's more of a situation of if I have something in there, I have to delete all the columns and frames out and then import a new one in there, and then I lose all my bolting information. It's just a little difficult. So it's much faster just to make those small changes by hand.
Yeah, I think that probably depends on who your manufacturer is. That's kind of a decision they would make internally.
Okay, next question. What about virtual reality for manufacturing? I've seen a manufacturer with 3D goggles with a 3D overlay of the piece over the actual piece to do quality checks on whether clips, holes, plates are in the correct place. Do you know how many manufacturers are moving towards that? It would probably be beneficial in the field too.
Yeah, I've done a couple of demos like that from our end for augmented reality. So, as long as you're confident that everything is correct in your model, everybody's using the same model. You do, I think it's via Trimble Connect, where you can actually put that on. You could lay some QR codes to align your model with the real world and kind of check as you go, or even have it at the greenfield stage. So, and we are able to do that again, but it's all based on customer demand because it does add a little bit of time.
Yeah, I think, getting into like the kind of the VR AR stuff and some of that stuff, this really like starting to get into more like we're talking about like very more practical application, like, field use stuff like that. This is starting to get into more of like very advanced stuff. I know people are starting to use this stuff. Again, it probably depends on the company and stuff like that. Technology definitely exists to do it. I used to go to the Autodesk University conference like once a year, which if you're interested in this stuff, that's a great conference to attend. But you will really see like 10 years into the future things at that conference that people are like, that maybe just aren't quite there yet. They're developed, they're too expensive, stuff like that. But, this stuff can go from very early concept, just thinking about a project, to people can use the data in these buildings to literally run their buildings once they're built. So if like someone like Google, I went to a panel discussion similar to this, where one of the people on there was from Google, and they're like, going forward, every single building they build follows BIM workflows. They want all their data, integrated into one location, one file, so that when it comes down to it, if a light bulb goes out in their building, kind of like Jeff was showing this automated report for a clash, their facilities manager gets an automated email when a light bulb goes out, because that's all been built in their BIM model and located with parts, all this stuff, and set up using their BIM workflow. So that's like big brain outer space stuff, kind of, but you can start small and build up to that point with some of the VR, AR, more advanced things.
Yeah, that's getting into like the digital twin space.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah, digital twins. That's on our frequently asked questions, Marco, is what's a digital twin? So
yeah. From a manufacturing aspect, I've seen several manufacturers in the country, especially the larger ones, are using tablets in their shops instead of using paper. They either have tablets in the shop, or they may have PC stations in the shop rather than using paper. So that is definitely coming, and it's already here for some. The VR part of it, a little bit lagging, I think, still, but they're definitely step in that direction.
And I'm glad that other people, other participants are kind of answering the questions as well, as this is interactive. So Justin said that they're using this in manufacturing as well as virtual reality in the field. It does make a tremendous difference in the field. For builders discussing projects with owners, the IFC models allow for more detailed discussions on the front end of the project as a sales tool, providing a visual solution. And then we do design build, but outsource engineering. Unlike Tucker, this is Seth. The preliminary model VP helps establish a perimeter footprint for the foundations, even though the model will change as a result of design. It speeds up the design process. I don't know if any additional comments need to be made on those three comments.
No, I was going to add on to the comment from Thomas there about the IFC models. So we've got a couple of people have talked about different softwares, and so that's an important thing I think to touch on. If you notice, when I put my slides up, I had something on different applications, and I listed that as high difficulty, and that is because there are a lot of them, and they do have slightly different uses. So there's a lot of things you would see qualified as like a BIM software that don't all have identical uses. So, we've talked about Tekla a lot. Tekla is a detailing software, so it does produce like shop ready models. Revit does not. Revit doesn't produce detail like shop ready information. Revit's more for coordination, collaboration. It's kind of its strength. And then you've got SketchUp as another option, that is a little bit more like even less detailed than the other two. So you've kind of got SketchUp's on kind of front end, Tekla's back end, and Revit's kind of in the middle with those things, and they all have slightly different applications. The IFC files though is just a kind of a catch-all BIM file format, and a lot of people in our industry work a lot with those IFC files. So you'll see that get thrown out around a lot, and pretty much any BIM software can open one of those IFC files. So. But when it comes into whatever BIM software you're viewing it in, it's going to come in kind of like as just an object, like a whole object. So it's usually not editable.
Yeah, I'm happy you brought that up, Jake. IFCs, I've been asked about that from my team too, because we have clients that demand Tekla, but we have more Revit folks. So the explanation there is just like Jake said, it's a way for these different platforms to play nice with each other. It's an export file type. And you mentioned Autodesk University. I actually attended one a couple of years ago in Las Vegas. And, to my surprise, it's an Autodesk event, and their keynote speaker, like the thing on the bottom had like Rhino CAD and 3ds Max and like Tekla and Trimble and all this stuff. So they're all about, what can we do to help with collaboration ease between the platforms, and IFCs are how, we do that.
Yeah, I was shocked to see Trimble, who's kind of a competitor with Autodesk, have a huge booth at one of their biggest conferences.
Yep.
There's like 10, 15,000 people at those Autodesk conferences. So yeah, they're massive events.
Okay, and then we had a question from Vince on, is there anything in AC 478 on BIM? I'll let Tucker, correct me if I'm wrong, but I cannot recall anything in the criteria about BIM.
No, there's nothing in the criteria about BIM. It hasn't been addressed at all with regards to that.
And then is AWIP detailing their IMP projects in a BIM environment?
Yes, so we started off initially depending on customer demand. We have one of our teams, one of our 4 teams is a just fully BIM team. That's all they do. But as I mentioned, we're trending towards training the whole team into that. So yeah, we do.
Great. And then Vince, representing MBMA, did put in the chat that MBMA is working on adding BIM to their common industry practices. So that's a great resource for metal building contractors and erectors as well. Just another thing before I forget, all of this talk about the aging workforce, I just want to make sure everyone is aware of the public career page and the members only career resources that are on the MBCEA website. It's just a side note, but MBMA has great videos, MBCEA has great videos to take into your career day to help introduce students, young people to construction, manufacturing, all aspects of the industry. So make sure you take advantage of those. You're using those resources. You can download them, put them on your website, put them on your social media, use them in career days. So just kind of like a little side plug for utilizing and finding people who are currently interested in, this topic. As, Tucker was saying, the younger people are interested in this. Any other questions or comments? We have just a few minutes left. Is there anybody on the call that is using BIM and has another story or way that they're using it that they feel would be beneficial for either manufacturers or contractors or erectors? Everyone's here because they're not using it and they wanted to learn about it, right? That's great. We're glad you joined us. That was the whole point. Is there anything that you were hoping to learn that you didn't learn? You still have a chance to ask a question. There are no dumb questions. You should have seen me fumbling through trying to prepare for this because I didn't understand BIM enough. All right, you guys, our panel did such a great job educating all of our participants, so I appreciate that. Any last words? Any last questions? Oh, we got one. How can AI be beneficial probably in the future on BIM? AI.
We couldn't make it through a meeting without a question about AI. Sure. I'm sure it can. I don't really think I fully understand, and I think a lot of us probably, I don't even think the people who make the AI, from what I've read, fully understand it. So, my guess is that it is, and that the companies who work on those things are 100% looking at how they can utilize, AI or large language models, in their tools and their processes. But I don't know what that would look like personally.
Yeah, we're seeing things pop up where they use AI for mock-up models. So you would type in, say, give me a building, and you type in the building parameters, 100-foot long, 100-foot wide, blah, 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 and it could output that building. Very basic model. You can't use it for much, but you can use it for a sales model, right? So we're seeing that, as well as different tools, development tools in Tekla and other software, helping by basically inserting standardized connections and things of that nature. So it's definitely coming. It's more on who's willing to use it, I think. If you're not willing to use it, you're probably, I don't like to say you're going to be left behind, but things are moving very rapidly.
Yeah, so AI for our processes, a lot of for our like render designs and stuff, we use some platforms that are AI assisted. We're looking at AI stuff just for our takeoff processes, but I've also seen demos for generative modeling. So that it's with an ilk towards like value engineering. So there's like a plugin, I believe it's in Revit, where it'll spit out several views of a building type, with different products for a specific location, and there's X amount of savings if you do this, this, and this. So there are definitely places where AI is going to be integrated into BIM if it hasn't been already.
And I'm going to combine Seth's two questions together. Does BIM cost extra? And what is the fastest way to get a usable model from a manufacturer?
Yeah, I can answer those a little bit. So yeah, I think probably does the BIM cost extra? Again, this is where kind of being knowledgeable about the LODs and what they mean, and how to use them becomes important. And so that probably is a question you have to have with your manufacturer, right? It's probably going to vary from manufacturer to manufacturer and what exactly you're looking for. And so then, what's the fastest way to get up a usable model from a manufacturer is again, depends on what you qualify as usable and what you're trying to use it for. So those are just kind of needs to be part of your scope definition and your project life cycle.
It depends on the manufacturer too,
Yep.
and the complexity of the building. See, if
Yep.
it's a complex building, they normally have to use BIM anyways to model it. Most brands do. A simple building, like you said, it costs more to model than BIM. They typically won't do it. And it also depends on their estimating programs. How are their estimating programs tied to a BIM model? But Seth does have a good question, because it's very hard to get a model very early on in the project because the brands don't want to put the energy into the estimation quote. Okay. And so that is one area that's lacking. It's hard, especially on our end, is we have to do a lot of guessing, and we have to build a lot of things off of a web page called Revit City. We grab a bunch of half-built models that we try to jam in to make it look nice. So there's a big gap between estimation to where you get the BIM model from the manufacturer, because that's normally is only about 4 weeks before production. That's what we're seeing right now. So there's a real lag time in that.
You can, from a manufacturer that uses slide rule, as soon as the engineer has, or as soon as an engineer or a project person goes in and sets it up in MBS, you could have a model at that point. The issue is that, from what I hear, is they'll send a model out and the builder says it's, if this is the model. So they're going to they start doing things they shouldn't be doing with that model, and they don't accept that model is an estimation model. They use it for construction, and then now that's happened so often over the last 15 years that manufacturers are scared to hand out those models. So that's, it's it sucks that we have to be that way, but that's what I've seen.
That is where
very early.
That is where I think too, again, being familiar with those LOD definitions, being able to communicate that stuff. And this is like any other part of any construction project, right? Like it's about defining scope. So the scope is not, is that there's BIM on this job. The scope is, we want these LODs at these milestone stages, and these are what are going to be included in those. And, so even kind of having like almost like a Gantt chart of your LOD deliverables, might be something that you would consider if you're wanting to really utilize a cradle to grave BIM workflow. But again, this is going to be scalable. It's going to be a little bit different for every business, and it might even be a little bit different from project to project.
And this may already have been kind of answered with the last question, but this will be the last one we take if we can 30-second wrap up. How do the manufacturers' models keep up with the pace of project changes?
The models don't typically come out till the very end of the design and detail. So really, there's a preliminary and then there's one other final model. They don't typically update it along the engineering and detailing path.
Yeah. It's not what we would call because we run into this a lot. Sometimes you do more conventional steel. If they're only working in Revit, they'll utilize what I would call like a living model workflow, wherein they're going in and they're making changes in their model as they happen. Your metal building manufacturer is more than likely not doing that. So when you get a model from them and you get this IFC file, it's kind of a timestamp, that is the model that was the model and the shape that it was in whenever it was sent. So that's not being constantly updated as changes are made, unless a new model is requested or there's some kind of agreement or understanding about when that model is coming and what's included in it. And again, we are working on some resources to help better define this kind of stuff, you know, as so to provide some guidance, you know, for how to maybe go about some of these things. So.
Okay. Appreciate everyone's participation. All of you who joined us today. Thank you to our panel of experts talking about BIM. Hopefully everybody learned something today. Appreciate everything in the chat, all the extra comments I might not have been able to read that weren't specifically questions, but comments to the conversation. Thank you for participating in that way. And this is recorded and it will be in our products and services page. So if you want to watch it again or share it with someone else, you will have access to it. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.
Thanks, Sasha. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sasha.
There.